Volunteer Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. Radio Reading volunteers broadcast daily readings of newspapers, magazines, and books to area blind and handicapped persons who are provided reading radios. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, and questions you may have, and stay with us. Our Reading the Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, July 5th. Your readers are
Dan Arth
and Edwin Vieira. Here's a look at the weekly forecast coming up. It'll be mostly cloudy and humid today with a high of 80, cloudy tonight and a low of 64. Mostly cloudy and humid tomorrow to start off the work week with a high of 77 and a low of 64. Times of clouds and sun as well on Tuesday with a high of 80 and a low of 65. Partly sunny on Wednesday with a high of 82 and a low of 68. Humid and breezy in the morning on Thursday with a high of 82 and a low of 69. But thunderstorms return on Friday with a high of 79 and a low of 65. A thunderstorm or two will linger around during the weekend on Saturday with a high of 81 and a low of 65. Now here's Dan with our first story.
Thanks, Edwin. Appreciate that. So our lead story today, man waging battle to secure release from psych center. The state says he poses a danger. He claims he is being punished. Article is by Dan Herbeck. According to New York's Office of Mental Health, Gary A. Marzolf Jr. is a dangerous psychiatric patient with a long criminal record who should be kept away from society for the protection of himself and others. But according to Marzolf and his family, state officials want to keep him drugged, sedated, and out of the public eye because he has blown the whistle on patient safety issues at the Buffalo Psychiatric Center. In a case at Erie County Court, Judge Suzanne Maxwell Barnes is trying to decide who is right. The judge listened to evidence from both sides on Thursday as she tried to determine whether Marzolf, an outspoken 58-year-old Army veteran, should be kept in the psychiatric center against his will. Their goal is to keep me here and silence me, Marzolf told the Buffalo News on Friday. He said psychiatric center officials are forcing him to take psychotropic drugs that are killing me. The patient also claims that state officials have a financial reason for keeping him as a state inpatient. He gave the News a statement from the Medicare program showing that the state of New York billed Medicare $228,269.88 for 4 months of his care in Buffalo during the period of August 28th to December 23rd of last year. The total would be $684,809.64 if the state billed Medicare at the same rate for Marzolf's care over the course of a year. Money is one of the reasons why state officials want to keep him in the Buffalo facility, Marzolf claimed. Patients like me generate revenue for the state. Officials of the Office of Mental Health have declined to comment on Marzolf's case or his allegations, citing patient confidentiality issues. But speaking in general terms, OMH spokesman Justin Mason said the state agency would never punish any patient for speaking openly with investigators about patient safety issues. The state attorney general's office, which is handling the court case, declined to comment. According to the state's court papers, the Office of Mental Health considers Marzolf to be a dangerous individual who needs to be kept in a secure mental health facility. The state's application seeking to keep Marzolf in state mental health care says Marzolf suffers from a dangerous mental disorder that constitutes a physical danger to himself and others. The application was submitted by Abdul Q. Brula, clinical director of the Buffalo Psychiatric Center. Continued treatment in a state psychiatric center is essential Brula wrote, because Marzolf's judgment is so impaired that he is unable to understand the need for such care and treatment. The patient also has a history of alcohol and drug abuse dating back to when he was 15, according to the state's court papers. According to state attorneys, Marzolf has had a long series of arrests and jail terms dating back to 1990. Court papers describe at least 10 arrests for crimes including driving while intoxicated, cocaine possession, burglary, menacing, criminal weapon possession, and violating a court order of protection. In 2015, he was arrested after extensive and obsessive stalking of a Buffalo woman whom he had been romantically involved, the state said in court papers. When Marzolf was in jail in 2016, he conspired to harm the woman by providing a fellow prisoner names and addresses of people whose homes he wanted burglarized. He gave the prisoner a detailed drawing of the layout of the interior and exterior of his former girlfriend's home, according to the state's court papers. Marzolf told authorities he was using alcohol and cocaine during his stalking crimes, the state alleges. He also explained that he later realized that he was tormenting the woman and said he regretted his actions. In March of 2024, Marzolf was committed to the custody of state mental health officials after he was found not responsible by reason of mental disease for violating the woman's court order of protection and other crimes, according to the state's papers. I have done some bad things over the years, all of which were done under the influence of drugs and alcohol, Marzolf told the news. I take ownership of every harmful thing I've done, but I have never physically harmed anyone. I am not violent or a danger to the public. Marzolf's family, including his father, Gary Marzolf Sr. of Lackawanna, portray Marzolf as a person who is deeply troubled but not physically dangerous.
She thought her land was clean. The state says it may be toxic. Department of Environmental Conservation and the Environmental Protection Agency looking for radioactive waste in Niagara County. From Mackenzie Schumann. Carolyn Johnson knew she had to be careful when she bought her Niagara Falls home in the 1990s. She'd grown up living just north of Love Canal, where her childhood house had reeked of chemicals, and the basement sump pump was constantly getting corroded by unknown materials. So she knew to ask the sellers and the assessor's office whether there was any known history of toxic contamination under or around the home. They said, no, it was just farmland. Johnson said, it's clean. 3 decades later, Johnson found out that her property, in fact, wasn't clean. Her land, she was astonished to learn, may contain buried radioactive waste. It's scary. Of course it is, she said. We're concerned. We still have kids and dogs here. And we don't know where exactly it's at. We have a garden in the back, too. What have I been digging? Johnson is not the only homeowner to learn troubling news about radioactive waste. She's one of 120 property owners in western Niagara County who received a letter from the State Department of Environmental Conservation and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency notifying them that radioactive waste could be buried in their yards. The letters followed multiple surveys from the two agencies as they searched for radioactive waste buried in Erie and Niagara counties. The first surveys in October 2023 used a low-flying plane equipped with radiation detection equipment. That was followed by vehicle-based surveys starting in the summer of 2025. Residents weren't informed of all the possible contamination until May, when the letters arrived with requests to access their properties to, quote, evaluate potential radiological activity, according to a copy of one of the letters sent to the Buffalo News. But so far, that is the only information property owners have received. The DEC and EPA have refused to share further information with residents or the Buffalo News about how much radiation may have been found. When Johnson asked visiting DEC officials about how much radiation was on her property, she got a troubling and non-specific answer. They said there were extremely high readings here, she said, describing how DEC officials pointed to her front and side yards to describe the radioactivity they'd found. So that's worrisome. Although aerial surveys have been used for decades to accurately measure radiation levels in the area, the DEC refused to disclose the results of the 2023 survey when asked by the news. The locations of interest were identified based on fluctuations in radiological measurements along the survey path, not based on findings of specific radiological levels, the agencies said in a joint statement emailed to the news. With owner permission, DEC/DOH will perform further ground surveys. Of the 120 property owners who received letters from the DEC requesting access for further studies, just over 30 had agreed as of June 12th, according to the agency. Damon Gilbert, a fellow in the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest Environmental Justice Program, said the DEC and EPA don't need to ask property owners for permission to enter their property to investigate hazardous materials. But if the property access agreements are a way of earning community trust, the agencies could do more, he said. Providing residents with meaningful information about why their property was selected really does help with trust and support, Gilbert said. With an environmental justice community like this one that's been historically impacted by radiological concerns, residents deserve to be given transparency. Transparency is key, said environmental law attorney Torrin Torrey, especially when dealing with radioactive waste. I would hope and I would assume that they're going to release the information to avoid exactly what we've seen at certain properties where the government knew of sites impacted by radioactive wastes, he said. But then those properties weren't publicly identified, so they changed hands. People bought those properties. Some people probably developed cancer from the exposure. Today's surveys come more than 4 decades after radiation surveys were first conducted in Niagara County. In 1978, the U.S. Department of Energy conducted an aerial radiological survey of the Niagara Falls region and found more than 15 properties with elevated radiation levels. That was followed by an aerial survey by the EPA in 1986, in which 100 sites were found with high levels of radiation. However, none of those sites were remediated directly following the surveys. Over the past 40 years, several properties in Niagara and Erie counties have been intermittently cleaned up, typically after construction workers discovered radioactive material buried on project sites. Radioactive slag, a waste byproduct of the chemical industry, has been discovered at Niagara Falls State Park, a Niagara Falls bowling alley, at the Holy Trinity Cemetery in Lewiston, under the properties of at least 14 Lewiston, Grand Island, Buffalo, Ransomville, and Niagara Falls homes, at the Donovan Head Start building in Niagara Falls, and under the South Buffalo Tesla plant. Radioactive slag is made when naturally occurring radioactive materials in metals and coals are concentrated during superheated industrial processing. In a 1978 letter from Hooker Chemical, now Occidental Chemical Corporation, to the Niagara County Department of Health, the company attached an internal memo from 1960. It estimated roughly 9 million to 19 million tons of slag were produced annually between 1939 and 1946. In 1950, that figure was about 33 million tons, according to the memo. The slag was, quote, sold at a low price for building private driveways, streets, parking lots, and the like, it said. It's unclear from the memo whether all the slag was radioactive. Occidental was not the only company that produced it. Union Carbide Corporation and Bayer Crop Science, Inc. have historically made and sold it in western New York, according to court documents. A 2017 lawsuit filed by several Niagara County residents in federal court in Buffalo against Union Carbide, Occidental, and Bayer Crop Science claimed the companies knew or should have known the radioactive solid wastes posed a danger to human health and the environment. The companies have denied they were negligent in disposing of the radioactive slag. The lawsuit is currently stalled with no future hearings scheduled. Another property owner filed a lawsuit in 2024 claiming the radiation emitted from radioactive slag on his Lewiston home on Upper Mountain Road caused the fatal breast cancer with which his wife was diagnosed. An EPA assessment in 2020 found there was, quote, an unacceptable risk to the residents on the site from gamma radiation and radon inhalation, as well as radioactive dust particles originating from contaminated soils at the property, according to the 2024 lawsuit. The EPA spent 3 years and $7 million to remove 4,800 tons of radioactive fill from the property and an adjacent lot on Upper Mountain Road. The woman died in 2022 from breast cancer. She and her husband had lived on that property since 2011, and the 2024 lawsuit was dismissed on technical grounds.
Thanks, Edwin. Our next front page story, New Hope. For local news, why David Hoffman is investing in newspapers, including yours. Articles by David McCumber. Meet the man who's on a mission to save your newspaper. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. Time is 9:15 a.m. for those listening in the morning and 4:15 p.m. to those in the afternoon. David Hoffman is ignoring the naysayers who wrote off newspapers a long time ago. He sees things differently. Hoffman believes in the power of local news to strengthen communities and the country, and he's backed that conviction with tens of millions of dollars. You know, Hoffman says with a grin, we're running right towards some things that everybody else is running away from. That's why in February, Hoffman became the chairman of the board of Lee Enterprises, which owns this newspaper and publications in more than 100 other markets. To understand why he's doing this and how he's able to requires a look at an improbable backstory. Hoffman grew up in Washington, Missouri, a small town west of St. Louis. His dad was a milkman, his mother a waitress, and they struggled to put food on the table and buy coal to heat the house. They had no running hot water. Those things stay with you, Hoffman says quietly. As a star high school athlete, he attended Northeast Missouri State on an athletic scholarship and earned his degree from the University of Central Missouri. He got a start in the corporate world and eventually found his way to the executive search business, which he loved. Hoffman started his own search firm, which thrived and eventually gave him the chance to acquire more businesses. Hoffman now owns 127 companies. In June, his purchase of the Pittsburgh Penguins was finalized, a $1.7 billion deal. He has made the Forbes Billionaires list for 5 straight years, this year rising to number 1,571 among the world's richest people. In 2023, Hoffman received the Horatio Algier Award, a prestigious honor recognizing people who have overcome significant obstacles to achieve success. It's funny, the events that change a life. When he was just 9 years old, Hoffman pitched a no-hitter for his Little League team. The life-changing moment, though, came afterward. The local newspaper, the Missourian, wrote a story about the no-hitter and ran it with Hoffman's picture. That made a huge impact on me, Hoffman says. It piqued my interest in the newspaper, and I started reading it, and he never stopped. I can honestly say that from the time I was in the 4th grade to the present, through high school, college, throughout my career, wherever I've lived all over the country, I always kept up with the Washington, Missouri. He says, stayed in touch with local news. That great, fabulous newspaper kept me connected to my community, even when I was living in other parts of the world. The motivation to save newspapers. 5 years ago, Hoffman wanted to read about the athletic exploits of his grandchildren in the Chicago area. Unfortunately, that type of local sports coverage wasn't as plentiful as he had expected. Hoffman remembers. He found out that the Pioneer Press in Glenview, one of Chicago's northern suburbs, had recently closed up shop. It made me realize what that meant for many small communities across America. He says, the newspaper builds the fabric of a community, celebrates it. What is going to take the place of that? Hoffman believes that sense of belonging that he remembers from growing up in a small town is essential to the country's future. What will we become without it? He asks. A country of driverless cars and not knowing our neighbors and our kids sitting there playing video games? Is that what we want? In today's transient world, he continues, people can live wherever they want to live, but I've got to believe what you're living, you want to like it, or you're going to find a way to move someplace else. I think people want to be proud of where they live, and there's no better way to make that happen than a newspaper. So in 2022, Hoffman started buying community newspapers. He bought the Missourian. He's very proud to own his 125-year-old hometown newspaper, and he kept buying papers, 42 titles so far, which would by itself make him one of the country's largest newspaper investors.
And now on to world news. Funeral for Khamenei draws huge crowd in Iran. From Reuters. Tens of thousands of Iranians thronged a vast outdoor prayer complex in Tehran on Saturday to view the coffin of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who ruled the Islamic Republic for 37 years before being killed at the start of the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Dressed in black and draped in the red, white, and green flags of the Islamic Republic of Iran, mourners held up posters and printed sheets with pictures of Khamenei and his son, and now successor as supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. Iran is staging mass funeral processions for Khamenei, who was killed in February by the opening airstrikes of the war launched by the U.S. and Israel in a show of public devotion to the Islamic Republic's theocratic state and revolutionary zeal. After a day of Khamenei lying in state indoors for senior Iranian leaders and foreign officials to visit, his coffin and those of several other family members killed in the same airstrike were brought to an outdoor stage for the general public to view from a distance, television footage showed. Mourners filed into the vast courtyard of the Imam Khamenei Grand Masala, beating their chests, wailing and waving the banners of the Islamic Republic and historic Shiite Muslim martyrs. Women dressed in black chadors wore white visors or held umbrellas to shield from the mid-morning sun. "Let us wail," a compare encouraged the crowds through a loudspeaker. "Everyone chant oppressed, everyone say Hussein," he said, invoking Shiite traditions of sacrifice, including that of the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Hussein. On cue, the crowds wailed and chanted. The Israeli strike that killed Khamenei also killed his daughter, grandchild, daughter-in-law, and son-in-law, according to Iranian state media. Their 5 coffins, all draped in Iranian flags and placed on a raised platform, included a tiny one for the 14-month-old granddaughter. Iran's military and security institutions vowed revenge for Khamenei's death, and chants of, quote, "Death to America" echoed through the Masala, state broadcaster Seda Vasima said. No peace, though. The funeral is taking place at a critical moment for Iran, where the clerical rulers backed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, are buoyed from surviving what they saw as an existential war against their most powerful foes. But behind the veneer of unity and devotion, public support for the Islamic Republic has worn paper thin, analysts say. Mojtaba Khamenei, who has long been close to Iran's elite IRGC, has not been seen in any new image since being wounded in the strike that killed his father. Thousands of U.S. and Israeli airstrikes hit a range of military targets, energy and civilian infrastructure during weeks of the war that began with the killing of Khamenei on February 28th. The attacks killed more than 3,000 people in Iran, according to state media. Iran retaliated with strikes on U.S. bases, missiles fired towards Israel, and a series of hits on energy targets in Gulf Arab states, while choking oil shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. At least 13 U.S. troops were killed. Thousands more people have been killed across the region in the fallout from the war, notably in Lebanon, where Israel continues to fight the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group. Israeli attacks and demolitions have flattened vast swaths of civilian areas in southern Lebanon. The U.S. and Iran reached a shaky ceasefire by early April and signed an initial agreement to halt fighting in June, although some tit-for-tat attacks continue. The U.S.-Iran rivalry has helped keep the Middle East in a state of conflict, along with Israel's own wars against Iranian allies and its campaigns against Palestinians. Observers say the war, which killed many senior Iranian military and security officials, has empowered hardline leaders in the country, who are more willing than the late Khamenei was, to launch direct attacks against their adversaries. Shiite martyrdom. In Iran's theocratic system, Khamenei was not only head of state and leader of a revolutionary movement, but the earthly representative for Shiite Islam's 12th Imam, who disappeared in the 9th century. His death in an enemy attack plays into a powerful Shiite tradition of martyrdom and mourning. Khamenei's coffin was unveiled late on Thursday. On Friday, the coffin was laid in state in the Great Prayer Hall, built to honor his predecessor, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khamenei. The coffin will remain in the Masala until Sunday evening. Burials are meant to be conducted within a day of death in Islam, but because of the risks of holding a big funeral during the war, it was postponed until after last month's interim truce deal was agreed to. After what authorities are billing as a massive procession in central Tehran on Monday, the remains will be taken to the seminary city of Qom, the center of Iran's Shiite hierarchy, for ceremonies on Tuesday. Ceremonies will be held in Iraq's shrine cities of Najaf and Karbala on Wednesday, with prominent attendees from Iran's regional network of Shiite proxies. He will be buried on Thursday after another procession in Mashhad near the tomb of the Imam Reza, a figure of great devotion in Iran. Authorities plan to mobilize millions of people for his big processions over the coming days, offering transport, food, and lodging to buoy the number of people encouraged in the population of over 90 million to attend commemoration.
And our next world news story, Leo calls on U.S. to welcome and shield immigrants. Article by the Newswire Services. Pope Leo marked the 250th anniversary of U.S. independence on Saturday with an appeal to Americans to welcome and protect immigrants in a letter sent to his home country as he visited Italy's migrant frontline island of Lampedusa. Leo, who drew the ire of Donald Trump last year after calling the president's hardline anti-immigration policies inhumane, also urged the world to become more human and to help those fleeing war and poverty. During a day trip to Lampedusa, a gateway for migrants risking dangerous Mediterranean crossings into Europe from Africa, the Pope urged European leaders to do more to assist arrivals, which have topped 7,000 this year. Separately, in an appeal sent to the U.S. for its landmark anniversary, Leo said the Catholic value of defending life includes welcoming, protecting, and assisting immigrants. To receive immigrants with compassion and generosity is not only an act of charity, but also a recognition of the dignity that belongs to every human person, he told the United States, offering support. Lampedusa, which lies between Tunisia, Malta, and Sicily, sits on one of the world's deadliest migration routes. Many migrants arrive after crossing the Mediterranean in overcrowded boats and makeshift vessels. The visit echoed that of Pope Francis, who made Lampedusa the destination of his first trip outside Rome after becoming Pope in 2013. Among those gathered near Italy's southernmost port to see the Pope were newly arrived migrants, Italian Coast Guard search and rescue officials, and aid groups. Leo told them he had come to show that the Pope continues to accompany you, support you, and encourage you. The Pope also called on European leaders to tackle migration in a comprehensive manner, integrating immediate relief efforts into a long-term strategic plan capable of receiving, protecting, supporting, and integrating migrants. He also called on them to help improve conditions in migrants' home countries so that fewer people feel compelled to leave. The Pope's visit speaks to every one of us, said Kande Abdu Arman, a migrant who arrived in Lampedusa in 2015 after traveling across 5 African countries, the Sahara Desert, and the Mediterranean. It is a reminder that our stories are seen, that welcome is not just a word, but an act of humanity, said Abdur Rahman, now a cultural mediator with the International Rescue Committee. On Lampedusa, Leo visited the cemetery where there is a section for migrants. Among those buried there is Yusuf Ali Kana, a 6-month-old who drowned in a migrant boat wreck in 2020. He also met migrants and blessed a dedication plaque to Pope Francis, who paid an impactful visit to the island in 2013. One of those he met, a boy by the name of Leo, who arrived on the island 10 years ago, having lost his mother, presented his namesake with a letter and a ball, which he said he hoped could be passed on to another migrant child. I'm super excited to meet you. 10 years ago, my story began here in Lampedusa. I was alone and I had lost everything. Above all, my mom. They say I stopped crying only when they gave me a ball. From that day, the ball stayed in my heart, and I never stopped playing, the letter read. I really hope this ball I'm giving you now can reach another child and make them happy just like it did for me.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:30 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:30 p.m. And now on to Washington National News. Analysis: as U.S. oil's profits grow, so does it clash with Trump, from Jarrett Renshaw and Sheila Dang of Reuters. Oil companies in the U.S. are set to report their strongest quarterly profits in years, courting a possible clash with President Trump, who has been pressing his longtime ally Big Oil to bring down gasoline prices before the midterm elections in November. After months of Americans complaining about pain at the pump, ExxonMobil and Chevron are expected to report second quarter earnings in the coming weeks that are more than triple first quarter levels. Oil prices spiked after the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran began in late February and global fuel supplies tightened. Oil companies' profits are forecast to rise to their highest level since 2022. The expected bonanza could complicate the normally warm relationship between Trump and the oil industry, an important financial backer of the current president and the Republican Party. Higher gasoline prices have amplified cries for affordability from Democrats hoping to win back control of Congress, and also sank Trump's approval rating as few Americans believed the Iran war was worth its costs. The administration has urged the Justice Department to investigate possible gasoline price gouging. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned producers and refiners the White House could consider administrative action if pump prices do not decline sharply. The industry is definitely talking to each other and thinking of ways to deal with it, but we know what's coming. We understand the politics, said one industry executive speaking anonymously. Since shipping through the Strait of Hormuz resumed last month, Trump has said he wants the national average to fall to about $2.50 a gallon, well below the current average of roughly $3.85 and about 11% below the low of his current presidency of roughly $2.81 reached in late December. Oil industry lobbyists have stepped up outreach to officials and lawmakers to blunt criticism, according to interviews with 8 lobbyists and industry officials. Oil executives say they've limited influence over retail gasoline prices. Crude oil prices account for nearly half of the price consumers pay at the pump, with the rest determined by refining, distribution, marketing, and taxes. Still, benchmark crude prices have returned to pre-war levels, yet U.S. gasoline prices remain 22% higher than before the war. Analysts and industry groups cite tight physical fuel markets and constrained gasoline inventories rather than crude oil prices alone. Bob McNally, president of Rapidan Energy Group, said the divergence highlights structural supply-demand pressures. Gasoline prices don't move in lockstep with crude oil, especially during a major global disruption affecting supply, refining, and inventories, said Bethany Williams, a spokesperson for the American Petroleum Institute. The American fuel and petrochemical manufacturers said policymakers also play a role, citing regulatory costs. Refineries don't set the price of finished gasoline, and crude oil is just one of so many inputs, the group said. For instance, the Renewable Fuel Standard requires retailers to sell a certain percentage of fuel containing ethanol or other biofuels. The White House said Trump's top priority is lowering gasoline prices, citing falling oil prices since the Iran agreement and increased coordination with the oil industry on permitting and regulation. Exxon declined to comment. Chevron referred to a June 25th interview with CNBC in which CFO Amir Bonner said it would take time for gasoline prices to normalize. But there's bumper profits. Analysts expect Big Oil's second quarter earnings to be the strongest since 2022, when Russia's invasion of Ukraine roiled energy markets. According to analysts, estimates companies compiled by LSEG, ExxonMobil is expected to report about $15.9 billion in adjusted net income, more than triple its first quarter earnings. Chevron is forecast at about $9.9 billion, almost more than triple its prior quarter. Part of the increase will likely reflect a reversal of first quarter accounting losses tied to derivatives used to hedge crude and refined product exposure. But analysts say the broader gains come from stronger market fundamentals. Energy advisory firm TPH estimates U.S. gasoline crack spreads. The difference between the price of crude oil and the fuels produced from it averaged about $25 a barrel in the second quarter, up from roughly $16 in the prior quarter. It said diesel crack spreads rose about $15 to roughly $45 a barrel. the strongest margin since mid-2022. Robust demands for U.S. exports amplified gains as the war left refiners abroad short of supplies.
And our next national story, Trump accounts launch after plenty of fanfare. Article by Manya Sani. After months of fanfare, the Trump administration launched its flagship Cradle to Adulthood investment program, Trump Accounts, on Saturday. The program will provide U.S. citizens born between 2025 and 2028 a government-funded investment account of $1,000 that families can build on, adding a new savings vehicle to other tax-efficient college savings plans and retirement accounts. The $1,000 federal contribution at birth helps remove the barrier of having nothing to start with, which has historically been one of the biggest obstacles to saving, said Andy Blocker, head of policy, regulatory, and government relations at financial services firm Edward Jones. Several top U.S. companies have pledged support for the program with employer matches or additional seed funding. Participating companies include payment giant Visa, technology company Dell, and media and telecom firm Comcast. Earlier this week, chipmaker Micron pledged $250 million to support Trump Accounts. About 3.6 million children were born in the United States in 2025, according to provisional data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. While only U.S. citizens born during Trump's second administration will receive the $1,000 government contribution, Americans can open a Trump account for their children under age 18 with a valid Social Security number. The Treasury Department is overseeing the program with brokerage Robinhood and custodian bank BNY acting as administrators. The Treasury has warned families to be vigilant against scams and fraudsters and has provided information on what to look out for. The accounts are free to open, and parents, family members, employers, and charitable organizations can contribute up to $5,000 on a pre-tax basis annually. Contributions are automatically invested in a low-cost index fund designed for long-term growth. Account holders take control when they turn 18, at which point they can withdraw the funds or continue investing. Gains will be taxed upon withdrawal. On its website, Trump Accounts estimates that based on the historical average returns of the S&P 500 index, a child receiving annual contributions of $5,000 could accumulate about $271,000 by age 18, and that could grow to roughly $13 million by age 55 if the same annual contributions continue, although actual returns will likely vary depending on market conditions. At launch, all contributions will be invested in State Street Portfolio S&P 500 ETF, a low-cost exchange-traded fund that tracks the U.S. equities benchmark. The program's additional investment lineup includes ETFs from BlackRock and Vanguard, which give broad exposure to the U.S. stock market. The thesis behind Trump Accounts is to have more people participate in the greatest wealth creation vehicle on the planet, which is the U.S. stock market, said Steve Quirk, chief brokerage officer at Robinhood. While supporters have hailed Trump Accounts as a way to encourage investing from an early age, some policy experts question whether it will significantly narrow wealth gaps, arguing that returns will depend largely on families' ability to make regular contributions and on decades of sustained market gains. Government handouts have a long track record of failing to lift people out of poverty, and there's little reason to think this one will be different, said Adam Michel, Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute, a Washington-based think tank, the Cato Institute. He added that employer matching contributions are likely to be concentrated at large companies. The real benefit lands on families who already have steady jobs and the capacity to save, Michel said.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News and your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:40 a.m. For our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:40 p.m. And now on to business news. In manufacturing, Orchard Park's McGuard seeks to fill 45 entry-level jobs. McGuard is hiring a lot of people in a short amount of time. The Orchard Park manufacturer is working with Express Pros of West Seneca, an employment agency, to fill as many as 45 entry-level jobs. McGuard makes security products, wheel locks, and chrome-plated lug nuts. A drive-through job fair is scheduled for 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on July 9th on Thursday at McGuard's facility, 3875 California Road. Starting pay for these jobs ranges from $16.50 an hour to $21 an hour. No experience is required. Those who are hired will start out employed by Express Pros. After an evaluation period, workers who are retained will be transitioned to employment by McGuard. Darren Moscato, owner of Express Pros, said the drive-through format proved successful during the pandemic. Job candidates drive up, fill out an application on their phone, and do a quick phone interview. If they seem like a good prospect, they're brought into the facility to meet the managers and take a tour. If everything matches, they walk out with a job offer, Moscato said. During the evaluation period, Express Pros keeps in touch with the client and the new hires to see how things are working out for both sides. It's kind of an interview both ways, he said. McGuard had about 600 employees heading into the hiring ramp-up. The company has relationships with employment agencies, including Express Pros, to help identify workers who are a good match for its entry-level positions, said Kathleen Harris, who heads up human resources for McGuard. The job fair provides an opportunity to accommodate a larger number of candidates for assessments, tours, and potential job placement in a single day, Harris said. While we have found ourselves in a position where a higher than typical number of open positions for entry-level associates are available, this is not the result of any significant change in demand, large-scale growth, expansion, or other significant business activity at McGuard, she said. Registering to attend the McGuard Job Fair isn't required but is encouraged. To register, text #JOBS, J-O-B-S, N-O-P, to 716-800-4311. Separately, Express Pros is holding a job fair for nearly 60 skilled trades and skilled manufacturing positions at about 100 area employers. That job fair is scheduled for noon to 5 p.m. on July 16th at Express Pros offices at 954 Union Road in the Southgate Plaza at West Seneca. There's something going on in Western New York manufacturing, and we're right in the middle of it, Moscato said. We're helping all those employers find the talent they need and helping these workers find their next best job, keeping employees engaged. A Tonawanda manufacturer was coping with an unusual trend. A lot of its senior-level shop floor employees were leaving the company. APA Solutions, a leadership consulting firm hired by the company, tried to get at the cause in exit interviews. It was fascinating to hear how many of the more senior-level people said, "We created this widget, but I never knew what that widget actually did," said Joan Gracie, APA's president and founder. "I never knew what it represented for our clients. I never knew what the end product was. I never felt that I made a difference because they never connected me to a difference," she said. That was shocking for the senior-level leaders to hear that type of feedback. That kind of employee disengagement tends to unfold gradually, rather than as the result of a single dramatic event, she said. And neuroscience figures into the process, Gracie added, during a recent discussion hosted by the Buffalo Niagara Manufacturing Alliance. Employees constantly evaluate whether their input is being taken seriously and if their effect still matters, Gracie said. What the brain is actually doing is saying to itself, "No need to expand on this capacity, burn this extra energy, or do more than what's expected," she said. If you make a suggestion to an organization and are constantly shot down, if you feel like your direct boss isn't connecting your meaning to the role, these types of things happen organically to us, Gracie said. Employers can help prevent workers from pulling back from their jobs by having conversations with them and providing clarity about the work, she said. It is a rarity that we find a person is leaving an organization that they say to us, "It was a money thing," Gracie said. What we're definitely hearing and what we're seeing in the most recent generations is, "I didn't know what my job was, I didn't know where my job started, and I didn't know where it finished."
And our next business story, emergency cushion. Work savings plans aim to help employees with unexpected expenses. Article is by Andrea Ricoeur. Amber Comber, a single mother of two 20-something sons, hit a rough patch. Comber, now 53 years old, was an assistant manager at the Fresh Market store in Charlotte, North Carolina, when she started scraping and pinching to buy a home. It was hard with the mortgage and the taxes and all the things, she said not long after she bought her home. She and her sons discovered the refrigerator, fully stocked with food, stopped running. Shortly after, Comber's car broke down. She had a small amount of savings, but the unexpected expenses forced her to dip into her 401k account. After that, I just wanted to have an emergency buffer, she said. For Comber and thousands of other Americans, that hoped-for buffer is now a reality. Their employers offer workplace emergency savings accounts, allowing a portion of each paycheck to be diverted to a bank account dedicated to exactly what it sounds like: a broken down car, a medical emergency, or other unexpected expenses. One of the entities that helped turn an idea into those accounts was a partnership called the Emergency Savings Initiative between asset manager BlackRock and Commonwealth, a national nonprofit focused on financial security. A 2019 publication from the Federal Reserve was one of the motivations for the accounts. The, quote, report on the economic well-being of U.S. households explained many adults are financially vulnerable and would have difficulty handling an emergency expense as small as $400. And that was a wake-up call. It led us to step back and say, we're committed to long-term wealth creation for families and individuals, said Claire Chamberlain, president of the BlackRock Foundation, the company's philanthropic arm. But if people can't make the day-to-day work for them, if they're struggling paycheck to paycheck, it's tone deaf to talk about 30 and 40 years out. Better savers. The ESI estimates about 22 million Americans are eligible for emergency savings accounts as a workplace benefit. The group does not have data on how many accounts there are, but several large employers, including Delta Airlines, AutoNation, Best Buy, and Starbucks, offer them. Some, but not all, contribute to the accounts. When a worker opens an account, it is funded with a portion of that person's paycheck, just like a workplace retirement account. Those funds accumulate in an account designated as savings, so users are reminded to tap it for real needs, not indulgences. Emergency savings accounts aren't tax advantaged like many retirement plans, and some healthcare accounts are. One of the ESI's most important lessons: workers who contribute to an emergency savings account don't cannibalize their paychecks for those expenses. They become better retirement savers as well. Over to you, Edwin.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555. Sylvia T. Barry, Celia A. Borak ni Hardy, Peggy Mimi Bradley ni Gruka, Christine P. Burgard ni Mank, Henrietta A. Bystrak ni Populars, David R. Capizzi, Vito Anthony Casulo, Kenneth Albert Chambers, Paul Chiaravolati, Virginia S. Cody, Annie Lee Cunningham ni Miles, Anthony Charles Dandridge, Joseph A. DiRemio, Alice DeBozen, Peter Engelhart, Myrtle A. Frank ni Person, Elaine M. Frost ni Hamilton, Dolores Gargiolo, Florence Flossie Gordon ni Bootlack, Anthony P. Gott, Jeffrey G. Haderer, John A. Hahn, Robert Inglesade, Bradley S. Jackson, Kim M. Jezwiecki, Michael Ralph Johnson, Gregory Joseph, Jane E. Kovacs, nee Charlton, Judith M. Larkin, nee Martyr, Donna M. Lipka, nee Rogacki, Jenny Maroney, nee Catalano, David McMaster Sr., Karen Lynn Mees, Adam Maninsky, Robert Charles Noonan, Kim M. Phillips, nee Salisbury, Suzanne K. Piuch, nee Keeler, David S. Pinkowski, Edward L. Piotrowski, Samuel J. Puma, Jerome Rebman, Peter Rizzo, William Ryan, Nicholas M. Sarnowski, David H. Shank, John F. Schwartz, Edwin G. Shelp, Robin Lee Shields, Nimond, Thomas Schimmel, Daniel Sikorsky, Donna M. Stengel, nee Krieger, Paul R. Semendra, Maria H. Thomas, Robert Thomas Vallon Jr., David R. Witkowski, Elizabeth M. Whitnauer, nee Dempsey, Paul W. Zimmerman. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555.
Thanks, Edwin. Moving on to horoscopes. Happy birthday for Sunday, July 5th, 2026, which is today. You are charming, sensitive, and intuitive. When you find what you like, you explore it all the way. This is a year of work and construction. Build foundations externally and internally. Take charge of your health. Physical exercise will play an important role. And the stars show the kind of day you will have. 5 stars is a dynamic day. 4 stars is a positive day. 3 stars today, average. 2 stars, so-so. And 1 star, difficult. So for those born March 21st to April 19th, which is Aries, that's a 3-star day. You'll speak up when talking to others today because you're eager to go after what you want. Tonight, research and secrets. Taurus, those born April 20th to May 20th, that's a 4-star day. This is a wonderful day to accomplish whatever you want. You work hard for money. If you work for the benefit of others as well as yourself, you will come out ahead. Tonight, a friendly chat. Gemini, those born May 21st to June 20th. It's a 3-star day. Today you might see ways to transform yourself into a better version of yourself. Don't work solely for your own benefit today. Tonight you are admired. Cancer, those born June 21st to July 22nd, 4-star day. Today the sun in your sign is dancing beautifully with the moon, while Mars has a lovely alignment with Pluto. This means you can do what you want. Tonight, explore. Leo, those born July 23rd to August 22nd, it's a 3-star day. You might make some effective changes in the world around you by working with others. Ideally, this new result will benefit you as well as others. Tonight, check your finances. Virgo, those born August 23rd to September 22nd, that's a 4-star day. This is an excellent day to define some long-term objectives for the future. Think about goals that benefit you as well as others. That's a win-win. Tonight, cooperate. Libra, those born September 23rd to October 22nd. It's a 3-star day. Tread carefully in discussions about politics, religion, or racial issues because you have strong opinions today and you feel the need to let others know what you think. Tonight, work. Scorpio, those born October 23rd to November 21st. It's a 4-star day. Creative ideas might lead to new ways of using shared funding, shared property, or something that someone else earns. Tonight, it's a play evening. Sagittarius, those born November 22nd to December 21st, 3 stars. You will attract someone today who is persuasive. If you like what they have to say, you will enjoy this. Tonight, relax. Capricorn, those born December 22nd to January 19th. That's a 4-star day. You can get a tremendous amount done today with whatever task you choose because you have energy and perseverance. Tonight, discussions. Aquarius, those born January 20th to February 18th. That's a 3-star day. This is a powerful day for those in sports because you have energy and perseverance. Some of you might even be motivated by money. So tonight, check your money. Pisces, those born February 19th to March 20th. That's a 4-star day. This is a marvelous day to schmooze and enjoy the company of others. However, it's also a great day to make improvements at home. And tonight, you are strong. You are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Sunday, July 5th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And we will return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Edwin Vieira
and Dan Arth.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our readings of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Edwin Vieira
and Dan Arth. Moving on to local news. Midwifery program at UB aims to curb inequities in care. First class of students will begin training in spring 2027. That's inequities in care. Article is by John Harris. Around 2 years ago, University at Buffalo School of Nursing Dean Annette Wysocki invited longtime midwives Peter Johnson and Jennifer Guay to a meeting. Wysocki, motivated by conversations in the community about maternal health, was eager to know what it would take to start a midwifery training program in Buffalo. Johnson and Guay, with a combined 60 years of experience and strong Buffalo ties, told the dean they were committed to making it happen for the community. It's been a long journey, or as Guay aptly put it, a long labor, but the moment is nearly here, and UB leaders believe it is a big development for maternal health in Western New York. UB's new midwifery doctor of nursing practice program is expected to begin accepting applications in August for its first class of students, who will start the 7-semester program in spring 2027. The program, accredited by the Accreditation Commission for Midwifery Education, is one of 5 nurse midwifery programs in New York State and the only one upstate. The program will prepare registered nurses for advanced practices as certified nurse midwives, giving them the tools to provide primary, reproductive, and maternity care across a person's lifespan. They will complete clinical placements in hospitals and midwifery practices in Buffalo and in Rochester. Nurse midwives are viewed as a critical component of improving maternal and newborn outcomes in area where the United States still has striking inequities. In New York State, Black women are 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women, according to state data. In Buffalo, meanwhile, Black mothers are 5 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related issues than white mothers, according to the UB midwifery program leaders. At the same time, maternity care deserts are growing across the country, including the rural reaches of Western New York. According to the nonprofit March of Dimes, more than 35% of U.S. counties lack access to obstetric providers or birthing facilities, affecting more than 2.3 million women. And with a projected future shortage of obstetrician gynecologists, OBGYNs, more certified nurse midwives trained by institutions like UB can help expand access to care, particularly in communities that have seen women's health services cut by industry consolidation. It's going to enhance access to care, particularly for communities that are disadvantaged and don't have that access, whether that be rural folks in the South towns or disenfranchised populations, vulnerable populations in Buffalo, said Johnson, also president of the American College of Nurse Midwives. The 2 architects, when Wysocki called that meeting 2 years ago, she found 2 solid candidates to be the architects behind the midwifery program at UB. Johnson, born and raised in Western New York, practiced in Buffalo through the 1990s and later served more than 15 years as the chief nursing and midwifery officer of JPAGIO, a non-government organizational affiliate with Johns Hopkins University. Johnson also previously directed the midwifery and women's health nurse practitioner programs at Stony Brook University. One of his many students that he trained there was Guay. Guay, a longtime clinical associate professor at UB School of Nursing, worked as a midwife in Western New York since the early 2000s within the Catholic Health and Kaleida Health systems. She was one of the certified nurse midwives at Millard Fillmore Suburban Hospital who lost their jobs when Kaleida in 2021 decided to end its midwifery program at the Amherst location. Gui was devastated when the news broke, but after she brought in her skills and did more high-risk triage, expanding her expertise. Now she wants to help provide a well-rounded training experience for the registered nurses who will train to be midwives at UB. While Gui is the Certified Nurse Midwifery Program Director, she moved to Florida a couple years ago and anticipates stepping away at some point to allow a Buffalo-based director to step in.
Downtown rally on July 4th keeps, quote, patriotism alive. About 50 people were in attendance at the Freedom Rally held in Niagara Square on Independence Day. One of the organizers said the event was created as an opportunity for Republicans to speak their mind on the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding. What's most important is that we're here speaking what we believe instead of sitting back at home on our farms watching everybody else tear us down, said organizer Benjamin Watson. Many in attendance thought that holding the event on July 4th felt right. It's important to have it on this day because it's the 250th birthday of America. What better day? Watson added. Right-wing influencer William Matthews, who goes by Patriot Will online and has around 159,000 followers on Instagram, echoed a similar sentiment. The only reason why I do what I do, that I get on social media, is to keep the patriotism alive. You know, 250, that's a big milestone, and a lot of countries don't make it that many years, said Matthews. Matthews said he was at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 14, 2024, when a gunman shot at President Trump, said that he finds it's important to preserve traditional American morals and values. We got here today by having good values and morals. That is God, family, but them good values and morals that we've possessed all these years, it's under attack, especially during the Biden administration, he said. Phil Sikorsky, vice president of University of Buffalo's Turning Point USA and College Republicans, also spoke at the rally. The best days of America are not in the past, but lie in the future, Sikorsky said at Saturday's rally. It should this day be evident that America is not just a mere piece of land between oceans. Instead, America is a unique and revolutionary idea, the idea that rights of man come from God and not from government. It's the notion that freedom is a given right to all those who come here legally. Rebecca Flanders, a Buffalo native and artist, was the only counter-protester spotted at the rally. She said she felt inspired to attend as after the theft of the Somali flag from City Hall. I've always just really loved our diverse American community. I mean, I lived in the West Side forever. You know, they were my neighbors. They still are my neighbors, said Flanders. I just wanted to kind of be here as a representative of an actual resident who doesn't agree with this and who welcomes our neighbors from everywhere. Before the rally, the union that represents Buffalo police officers warned its members to be wary of counter-protesters in Niagara Square. In a text message to members sent Thursday, a copy of which was obtained by the Buffalo News, the union put it this way. Officers working the Trump rally be aware of people with extreme TDS, as they pose a threat to people trying to peacefully assemble and voice their right to free speech, the police union told members. This current city administration values the libtard ways more than celebrating this great nation's 250th birthday. TDS stands for Trump Derangement Syndrome. It's a phrase used by Trump supporters about people who criticize the president. Sources confirm the authenticity of the text message, but the news has yet to identify the author. Buffalo Police Benevolent Association President John Davidson didn't respond to a voicemail from a news reporter on Friday. The Buffalo Police Department declined to comment, as did Mayor Sean Ryan's office. One of the organizers of Saturday's event, according to its Facebook page, is Shane Jenkins, a Houston man convicted of assaulting a law enforcement officer with a deadly or dangerous weapon and destroying government property, as well as 5 other felonies and 2 misdemeanors connected to the January 6th riot, according to the Houston Chronicle. Jenkins, who prosecutors said broke into the Capitol building using a metal tomahawk and hurled objects at officers, was sentenced to 7 years in prison before being pardoned by Trump. We the people are the future of America, read a promotional image for the rally posted on Facebook. Join patriots from across Western New York to celebrate freedom and unity.
And our next local story, Williams boat crash in 25 is still under investigation. Article is by Dan Herbeck. Almost a year after a horrific Niagara River boat crash, state police and state parks police are still working on their investigation into the accident involving a high-profile Niagara County businessman and his fiancée. Meanwhile, a heated legal battle over the multi-million-dollar estate of Jerome P. Jerry Williams continues in courts in Buffalo and Florida. The two police agencies told the Buffalo News they are still trying to determine what led to the crash that killed Natalie Sansevero, 46, and is presumed to have killed her fiancé, Williams, 66, last July 23rd. Williams's body still has not been found, authorities said, despite exhaustive search efforts. Williams's high-performance boat crashed into a concrete abutment owned by the Niagara Falls Water Board near the North Grand Island Bridge around 9:30 p.m. Legal disputes about Williams's estate arose after the boat crash and are still being litigated. On June 23rd, Williams's daughter and estate conservator, Bridget Williams, asked the Erie County Surrogates Court to allow a judge in Hillsborough County, Florida, to decide legal issues involving the estate. She said her father's main residence was in Florida. In her court papers, Bridget Williams said a judge in Florida made the following ruling last September. Mr. Williams is a legal resident of the state of Florida who owns property in the state of Florida and is missing, and his whereabouts are subject to an ongoing investigation. While Williams's body remains missing, his family held a memorial service for him last summer, a few weeks after the boat crash. Video shows boats before and after crash. Video of the crash, recently obtained by the Buffalo News through a Freedom of Information law request, shows the moments before and after Williams's vessel hit a concrete abutment. The 23-second video clip, taken from the vantage point of the New York Power Authority's intakes for the Niagara Power Project just down the river, shows two vessels heading toward the shore, one in front of the other. Both vessels are visible due to lights aboard each boat. The boat following the other continues moving to the shore and then stops. About 4 seconds later, the light goes out. The boat that was leading appears to turn around and head back toward where the second vessel crashed. In August, the Buffalo News filed a Freedom of Information law request with the Power Authority for video footage and reports regarding the July 2025 crash. The Power Authority provided the video and a 7-page security incident report to the News on June 22nd. Pre-investigation advised that the boat was traveling at high speeds around 50 miles per hour and struck the concrete bottom of the power line, security staff wrote in the report. Death declaration being sought. The News reported in October that Williams's ex-wife, Kimberly Williams, has filed court papers seeking a declaration of death, in part because she is one of the beneficiaries of Williams's $1 million life insurance policy. To make a claim as a beneficiary of such life insurance, it is necessary for the death of Jerome Paul Williams to be declared. Stephen R. Silverstein, an attorney for Kimberly Williams, said in a court document. Silverstein declined to comment Thursday on the court dispute, except to tell the News it is ongoing. Police said Williams's 35-foot boat was following another boat piloted by his son Brian when the crash occurred. Police said they were trying to determine how fast the boats were moving and whether they were racing. At this point, the investigation is continuing and no charges have been filed in connection with the incident. State Police Troop A spokesman James O'Callahan told the News. This is still an active investigation and no additional information will be released until the investigation is closed, O'Callahan told the News on June 26. He also sent the news a copy of an earlier statement in which he said police are still trying to determine who was driving the boat, how fast it was moving, and whether the crash was caused by driver error, mechanical issues, or something else. A spokesman for the state police parks, who are also investigating the crash, also said the investigation is incomplete and continuing.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 10:15 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 5:15 p.m. And now to a feature story. Turtle Island transcends America 250th celebration. Visually stunning creation story is on tour in Western New York. Not everyone has been waving the red, white, and blue this week. That is a bit sad. It would be nice if we could try to put our political divisions behind us for the nation's semi-quincentennial. On the other hand, politics aside, there are those who have solid justifications for viewing all of the patriotic fun with a cynical perspective. Indigenous people aren't wrong when they say they have nothing to celebrate on America's 250th birthday. As artist G. Peter Jemison of the Seneca Nation's Heron Clan bluntly puts it, there's a variety of reasons given for the Revolutionary War, but the principal reason was that either the British or the Americans were going to be able to take our land from us, and we know how that turned out. And yet, Jemison, age 81, a well-known artist and native historian, is leading a celebration. Turtle Island, a multimedia production with traditional Haudenosaunee dancing, storytelling, and a giant inflatable turtle that floats overhead, was created by Jemison, along with the French company Plasticiens Volants, choreographer William Krause Sr. of the Seneca Nation's Hawk Clan, and Sky Woman Iroquois Dance Theater, under the leadership of independent producer Sonia Koslova-Clark. The production has been on tour throughout western and central New York, with the next date on Wednesday, July 8th, at the Onondaga State Historical Site in Irving. This is kind of an uplifting, positive performance that predates any notion of the United States, Jemison says, because this goes back to how the Earth came to be as it is. Many Western New Yorkers know at least a little bit about the Haudenosaunee creation story. There are a few different versions. The general narrative being used for Turtle Island is that a pregnant sky woman fell from her home in Sky World. She was caught up by birds who guided her to a safe resting place on the back of a giant turtle, floating in a massive body of water. A muskrat swam to the bottom of the ocean and brought up a bit of mud to place on the turtle's back. Sky Woman spread the soil, which became the earth. There's more, especially concerning the twins Sky Woman gave birth to, but that's the gist of it. Jemison made a film of this story in 2015 to be shown at the opening of the Onondaga Seneca Art and Culture Center, which is located at the Onondaga State Historical Site. For the animated portions of the film, he created a series of drawings that were then brought to life by the Rochester Institute of Technology's film students. For the live-action segments of the film, Tony Award-winning choreographer Garth Fagan worked with traditional Haudenosaunee dancers. The Iroquois creation story has been shown across the world, garnering a number of festival awards along the way. Narratives like this provide some of the most unifying archetypes the world has. Every culture and every religion has its creation story, and they often share very similar elements. As Jemison tells it, our creation story also talks about the nature of human beings. Within each of us, there is a destructive force, and there is a positive, constructive, good mind, the twins born by Sky Woman. But periodically, we wander off into our lesser selves, and then we have to get guided back to our better selves. This is the struggle and the nature of human beings. It puts things into perspective. Jemison's film is beautiful, but as a live performance spectacle, Turtle Island takes the narrative to a whole new level. That's thanks to the participation of French street theater group Plasticiens Volants. Those who have seen this group at Art Park, where it performed in 2017, 2019, and 2022, are unlikely to have forgotten the experience of walking among huge hand-painted inflatables being floated above their heads, seeming almost close enough to touch, accompanied by music and spoken narrative. Think Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, but way, way cooler and more interactive. Founded in 1976, Plasticiens Volants has performed at such events as the Olympic Games ceremonies in Barcelona, Sochi, and Rio de Janeiro, and the Nice Carnival Festival, but never in the U.S. until they were brought to Art Park by then-director Clark. There is only one inflatable in Turtle Island, the giant turtle, which is brightly painted from Jemison's original designs. Costumed dancers act out the narrative of the creation myth with the turtle hovering overhead. This is the second season for the production, which was held in Prospect Park, Brooklyn, Hudson River Park, and other locations last year. It's hoped that future productions will up the ante. Additional aerial creations would represent Sky Woman and other characters. We have Clark to thank for pulling together the pieces of Turtle Island. While at Art Park from 2018 to 2024, she created the Strawberry Moon Festival, which celebrated indigenous arts with music, dance workshops, and storytelling. She heard many versions of the Haudenosaunee creation story and was at the same time working to bring in Plasticine Volant. As she points out, the group's entire existence is about creating stories in the sky above our heads. Then she was introduced to Jemison and saw the possibilities. It just clicked, you know? Sometimes it just happens, and the relationship was born in such a productive and heartfelt way. Clark now works independently. Her company, Unicycle Productions, which she founded in 2011, is focused on bringing street art spectacles from across the world to the U.S. for touring. During her interview for this story, she said that she'd just gotten funding to bring in South Korean group Elephant's Laugh to tour a fascinating production entitled Muliji, which immerses performers in clear containers of water, emulating the dangerous lives of the female shellfish divers of Jeju Island, South Korea. That narrative is about the crossroads between life and death. As in Turtle Island, water can deliver both. Another group Clark is working with is led by Six Shuri, an eccentric artist who combines electronic brass band music with circus, dance, and theater. Clark is hopeful to bring more of her productions to Western New York's public spaces and lists such venues as Silo City, the lawn of the Albright Knox Gallery, or AKG, and even M&T Plaza as possibly hosting events. As she did with Plasticine Volant, she wants to introduce more Americans to European street theater, which she has traveled worldwide to explore. During one such trip, she made a startling discovery. At one of these festivals, I noticed that nobody's on their phone, she said. There are teens all around me, and there's nobody in their 20s all around me, and no one is on their phone. In order for a celebration to transcend political polarization, that much disconnection might be necessary.
And our next feature story, Royal Wedding. Swift, Kelsey are married in New York City. Article by Maria Svetkova and Nathan Lane. Pop music megastar Taylor Swift and football player Travis Kelce are married, the singer's publicist announced on Friday as guests attended a star-studded celebration at Madison Square Garden in New York that capped a 3-year love story. Just and T married flashed on giant screens on the exterior of the Manhattan Sports Arena. Swift's publicist confirmed via email that the Grammy-winning musician had wed the Kansas City Chiefs star. Comedian Adam Sandler officiated the ceremony, said the publicist's statement under the headline, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are married. The statement describes Sandler as a friend of the couple. Swift's brother, Austin Swift, served as man of honor, and Kelce's brother, retired football star Jason Kelce, was best man, the statement said. The bride and groom wore looks created by Christian Dior, and Swift chose jewelry by Cartier, according to the statement. No photos were released. Stars including Jennifer Lopez, Ed Sheeran, Jimmy Fallon, and Abby Wambach were spotted entering the garden on a sweltering day when temperatures topped 100 degrees. Hugh Grant, Jason Sudeikis, and Ethan Hawke also walked into the venue. Onlookers, including fans known as Swifties, strained to catch a glimpse of the celebrity crowd at the event dubbed America's Royal Wedding, and held amid heavy security at a site that sits atop one of New York's major transit hubs. One fan showed off a pink and white friendship bracelet that read Team Bride. Another held a handmade sign that put a spin on a Swift lyric, Karma is the guy on the Chiefs coming straight to MSG. It said, 14-year-old Gentry Vaughn from Michigan and her mother Danielle stopped to look at the Just and T married sign. We follow her because we love her so much, Gentry said. That's pretty cool. Jane Lowry, a 15-year-old high school student from Texas on vacation in New York, climbed scaffolding across the street to catch a glimpse of arriving celebrities. I wanted to see Taylor Swift because I do really like her music, Lowry said, adding that she had spotted only 2 football players from her vantage point. Swift has documented her romances and breakups in her music, and Lowry said she looked forward to the singer's album releases during her marriage. I think she'll write some cute songs about it, she said. Lights atop the Empire State Building turned light blue on Friday evening, a nod to the adage that something blue at a wedding brings good luck, according to a social media account for the landmark.
Mid-40s worker wants to drastically change life. It's asking Eric. Dear Eric, after 2 decades working in the same organization and several years in my actual position, I've been wanting to change. I actually like my job, but now in my mid-40s, I feel like I need to change things up for the second half of my career. Between my wife's income and some savings, we could get by financially for a while. I've resigned twice and gone back both times, saying, let's give it more time. While some friends are supportive and completely understand where I'm coming from, others, especially my parents, are highly concerned about me finding another job. I'm not even that worried about it. I really just want a break from work and the opportunity to come back refocused later. But I keep having so much doubt and second-guessing myself, especially when others express such nervousness. Any tips on deciding whether or not to take the big leap? From nervous for the second act. Dear second act, in another part of my life, I'm a playwright, and so I think a lot about second acts. It's crucial that you set up the action of the second act in the first. You may not know everything that's going to happen, but when the curtain rises after intermission, you're not starting from scratch. Similarly, I suggest you do some thinking and planning about what you want to try or explore after leaving your job. How are you going to come back refocused? Change doesn't just happen, but you can create the conditions for it. You don't necessarily need to know what job you'll be going into, although it's always a good idea to have something else lined up. But you can start planning for the after right now. Are you hoping to learn a new skill, connect with a different part of yourself, reset your life? Start laying the groundwork now. Take a class or a workshop over a weekend or at night. Apprentice yourself. Cultivate interests in your current life, beyond your job, so that you can carry those interests into the next chapter. Dear Eric, my mother committed suicide 13 years ago. At the time, my father, sister, and I didn't really mourn her. We'd been estranged from her for years, and she'd become incredibly abusive and refused to get treatment for her severe alcohol abuse and bipolar disorders. She also did it 3 weeks before my wedding, so I, at least, tried to put my confused feelings about her death on hold. Over a decade has gone by, and I am now in intensive treatment for major depression, anxiety, PTSD, alcoholism, and my own suicide attempts. Now that I have some distance from the worst of my illnesses, I find that I want to grieve for my mother, for the person she was before her sickness got out of control, and for the person she could have been if only she had sought out help instead of trying to end her life. However, my dad and sisters don't want to talk about her. I want to respect their feelings, but I miss my mom, and I don't want to grieve on my own. Or maybe I just want to know that they would have grieved for me if my own suicide attempt had been successful. How do I talk to my family about this without causing them more pain? Or should I just let it go? Sincerely, confused and grieving daughter. Dear daughter, I'm sorry for the loss of your mother and the incredibly painful impact her suicide has had on your life. You're right to process your grief. Dealing with the feelings you have, acknowledging them, and if possible, seeking to remedy them will help you. Though your sister and your father aren't in the same place emotionally or aren't ready to do this work, you don't have to do it alone. While processing with family it's sometimes helpful, it can be very beneficial to talk with a therapist or grief support group that will allow you to express whatever complicated emotions come up without having to negotiate around another person's feelings. Even though you share memories of your mother with your family, your perspective will always be unique. Start to document what you're thinking and remembering, whether through journaling, art, scrapbooking, or another means. You may find that your father and sister's resistance to talking about her ebbs in time. Give them the space to process this in the way that works for them. Remember, their relationship with you is different from their relationship with her, and you found ways to make different choices from the ones she made. Because of this, the three of you will have a future together, and there may come a time when they feel able to talk about it with you.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 10:30 a.m. for those listening in the morning and 5:30 p.m. for those listening in the afternoon. Moving on to sports. Carrying the load. Is it time for the Buffalo Bills to start scaling back usage of running back Cook? Article is by Jay Skursky. James Cook is a man of few words. It's not a surprise then that the Buffalo Bills star running back did not exactly go in depth when asked about his workload during the 2025 season. I just went in and did what I had to do to help my team win games, he said. I'm ready to go. Fair enough. While Cook might not be interested in having much of a conversation about his number of carries, you can bet that is something of which new head coach Joe Brady and offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael will be acutely aware. I think that's probably a week-to-week thing, Carmichael said. That's something I've experienced in other places as well. Just making sure the week-to-week workload doesn't get too overbearing because you're going to need these guys down the stretch of the season. But I think that's discussions we've had. Just, hey, there is plenty of guys on this team that we feel like can be playmakers for us. Cook will turn 27 a couple of weeks into the 2026 season. He's coming off a year in which he had 309 carries, which is easily the most in his first 4 NFL seasons. His previous high was 237 carries in 2024. The extra workload did not weigh down Cook at all. He led the NFL with 1,621 rushing yards, becoming just the second Buffalo Bills running back in team history, O.J. Simpson being the other, to ever lead the league in single-season rushing yards. Cook's yards per carry of 5.2 was the second best of his career, behind only 5.7 as a rookie in 2022, although in that year he just had 89 attempts. Cook gained 935 yards before contact last season, according to advanced stats kept at Pro Football Reference. That ranked number 1 in the league. He also gained 686 yards after contact, which ranked number 4. So he both benefited from solid blocking and did it himself when met by a defender. His 21 broken tackles ranked 9th in the league, although the league leader in that category, the Colts' Jonathan Taylor, had 27, so there was not a lot of separation in the top 10. Cook produced 68 first downs on carries, a total that ranked number 5 in the league. That came after a 2024 season in which Brady was questioned at times for not using Cook more on third downs. I don't think you ever go into each game with a mindset of like, hey, this is how many carries he's going to have. But it does pile up throughout the season, right? Brady said. I give him a lot of credit. You go back to the offseason he had last year, that he was able to withstand that, and you knew going into it how many times he was going to run the ball. And it wasn't like he's not taking hits. In a way, Cook put Brady in a bit of a tough spot. Surely the offensive coordinator and play caller wanted to get Ray Davis and Ty Johnson some more work, but Cook was playing so well that he made it tough for Brady to take him off the field. He was in such a rhythm and a routine that I felt confident in him being able to uphold that, Brady said. This year, again, we're looking at everything. But when James is not here, those other guys are taking advantage of the reps, so a great opportunity for them. But it's always good to see Jimbo back. To Brady's point, Cook missed most of the Bills' voluntary off-season program, choosing instead to stay in his native Miami so he could be closer to his family. Cook participated in last month's mandatory minicamp, and there is no reason to expect that his time away from the team is cause for concern. Cook missed most of the voluntary portion of the offseason in 2025 as he sought a new contract and then had the best season of his career after signing that deal. Just keep getting better, Cook said of his focus this offseason. Bigger, stronger, faster, and ready for the season.
Canisius's Kimball verbally commits to Syracuse. Elijah Kimball spent the better part of 2 years fielding calls from programs across the country. He actually made his decision weeks earlier, committing to Syracuse on June 10th, but Friday was when he made it official while standing inside Canisius High School's Bernard J. Kennedy 49 Fieldhouse with his family, coaches, and the city that raised him watching. For a running back who's drawn comparisons and attention as one of the top football recruits in the state, the decision came down to something simpler rather than star ratings or depth charts. It means a lot. The best players in New York stay in New York. That's what it means to me, Kimball said. Coming from Buffalo, I just want to put on for my city, show all the younger kids it's possible. I was once in their shoes, and as long as you keep your faith in God, you'll get there. It's a 2-hour drive. Kimball has carried outside expectations since before he was a teen. Canisius coach Craig Krzansky said Kimball has been fielding accolades since he's been 13 years old. Kimball most recently visited Syracuse, Indiana, and North Carolina, but has received more than 35 offers. He worked out on Monday night, and I asked him if he was relieved to make a decision. He couldn't be more relieved, Krzansky said. He said, I'm just glad it's over. Kimball described the emotional weight of the process in his own words. My path here? A long journey. Plenty of nights I felt like, was this for me? Kimball said. But God always gave me the reassurance and the motivation to keep going. The journey ran through dozens of offers, campus visits, and phone calls, but according to Krzansky, it ultimately turned on something closer to home. I think proximity to his parents may have been the final decision, Krzansky said. To get on the thruway in 2 hours and 10 minutes, they still could be inside the dome. It's still HCC. They still play at Miami, North Carolina State, Virginia, and Florida State. That's pretty good. Kimball confirmed the pull of family played a central role once the process narrowed. It's very comforting to have it over, Kimball said. A lot of traveling, constant phone calls, but now that I've found my home, I'm going to be a Syracuse Orange. I feel relaxed. He pinned down the exact moment the decision became real, even if the world didn't know yet. About June 10th, I think, I committed to Syracuse, Kimball said. It was hard keeping it a secret, but now that it's out, I'm real glad to just share the moment with everybody. Kimball pointed out his relationship with Syracuse coach Fran Brown as the deciding factor once he stepped on campus. Fran Brown, I'm telling you, it's about to be the franchise, Kimball said. When I went there, it just felt like family off the rip. There was no second guessing. I knew when I went there, that's where I was supposed to be, he said. The Syracuse staff's approach stood apart from the usual recruiting pitch. They definitely lived up to expectations from the time we got there, Kimball said. They were just real, genuine people. It seemed like nobody was trying to put on an act just because of the number one player they wanted to land. It just seemed like a real family-type situation. Kimball said Brown also framed the decision beyond football, a message that stuck with him. Coach Fran explained to me that football has to end one day, and what I learned there, I'll carry on when I'm 30, 40, 50, and it'll just set me up for the rest of my life, Kimball said. I do know football will end one day. It can end tomorrow, so just having something to lean on after I'm done with college is very important. Krzansky agreed on what the program represented. I know that they've been here often, that they really like him a lot, Krzansky said. They think he can play early in his career there, which is a plus. Kimball joins a Syracuse roster that has leaned increasingly on Western New York talent in recent years. Bennett's Rashard Perry is currently playing for the Orange. Maryvale's Kevin Jubbity graduated this spring and is now on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster as an underdrafted free agent, and Jameer Thomas spent time with the program after graduating from Bennett in 2024 before entering the transfer portal in January. And they're all 716 made. Although Kimball will wear blue and orange next fall, both he and Krzansky were emphatic Buffalo is inseparable from his story. The city, man. I just wanted to show them that you don't have to go far to get the job done, Kimball added. I truly believe I was in the light and the dark for the city. I had to show somebody that it was possible. If I didn't, who would? He described the support from the city as a source of motivation through the recruiting grind. The city gave me a battery on my back, with all the young kids constantly sending me messages saying I'm their favorite player and giving them the motivation to keep going, Kimball said. I'm just very glad that I was able to share my time with this city. Every time I go out there, kids always go to the games. Krzansky described Kimball as someone who will carry his roots to Syracuse and beyond. He talks nicely about the city because he knows that the city made him, Krzansky said, but it's also going to be the reason why he's going to be successful wherever he goes. He'll take the 716 with him. I hope he takes that and utilizes it as his chip.
Now to our next sports story. Messi, Argentina oust Cape Verde. Article by Nick Mulvaney. Reigning champion Argentina was pushed to the brink by Cape Verde side with incredible levels of resilience and needed an extra time own goal to clinch a dramatic 3-2 victory on Friday and a place in the last 16 at the World Cup. Cape Verde, playing in its first World Cup twice, came from a goal behind in a thrilling contest that went down to the wire in front of a noisy crowd of 64,478 packed into a hot and humid Miami stadium. 6 minutes into the second period of extra time, however, Lionel Messi swung a corner into the box and Christian Romero rose to head home off the arm of Cape Verde's Dani Borge and secure Argentina a date with Egypt in Atlanta on Tuesday. Messi had almost inevitably given Argentina the lead in the 29th minute with his 7th goal of the tournament, but Leroy Duarte equalized just before the hour mark. In the second minute of the first period of extra time, Argentina's Lisandro Martinez thought he had won the match when he lashed a sumptuous shot into the roof of the net. Cape Verde was not done, however, and left back Sidney Lopez Cabral curled a beautiful shot into the top corner of the net to put the score back on level terms at 2-2. Lopez Cabral could have equalized again after the decisive own goal, but his finely struck free kick was saved by Argentina goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez, who had to be at his best to deny Cape Verde in the dying minutes. The match was incredibly tough. You always have to take the positive, and it's that this team never gives up, said Argentina coach Lionel Scaloni, who was overseeing his 100th match in charge of the Albiceleste. I want to congratulate our opponents. Today they showed they are a great team. When it is said there are no easy matches in the World Cup, it is true. Cape Verde was beaten, but far from outclassed by the 3-time world champion as it put in a 4th magnificent display of teamwork and grit. I'm proud of my team, the work they've put in, said Coach Bubista. We must take pride in what we've done for our country to be able to play the way we did against the world champions and to draw level twice is something incredible. Stubborn defense. The only one of the 4 World Cup debutants to make it to the last 32 and ranked 67th in the world coming into the tournament, Cape Verde had hoped to frustrate Argentina as it did Spain, Uruguay, and Saudi Arabia in group stage draws. It succeeded for much of the game with its never say die attitude while showing no shortage of quality of its own in a neat pass and move game. Messi aside, Argentina was largely bereft of ideas against an obdurate defense, and Cape Verde libero Kevin Pina was the most impressive player on the pitch for long periods. Argentina made the breakthrough in the 29th minute. However, when Martinez lofted a long ball over the top of the defense to the feet of Messi, the 39-year-old Maestro took a touch with the outside of his left boot and buried it in the roof of Vazina's net for his 20th goal over 6 editions of soccer's global showpiece. Cape Verde knew it would need to score to keep its World Cup campaign alive, and Duarte fired a shot at goal soon after halftime that drew a saving dive out of Martinez Just before the hour mark, though, Cape Verde captain Ryan Mendez was freed down the right, and his pass into the box found Dutch-born midfielder Duarte, who controlled the ball with his left foot before drilling it past Martinez with his right. Messi had a chance to put Argentina back in front 4 minutes later when he was played through on goal, but Vazina stood up well to keep his shot out of the net. One of Messi's trademark free kicks was tipped away by Vazina in the 72nd minute, and Cape Verde defender Pico Lopez had to intervene to prevent Enzo Fernandez scoring 10 minutes later. Cape Verde held on to force the dramatic period of extra time, and it will now return home, Heroes having put its tiny island nation firmly on the soccer map. More than anything, we must be proud of what we've achieved, Bubista said. This World Cup has done justice to our efforts. It has shown our character. It's a shame to lose, but it was incredible.
In honor of America, here's our Mount Rushmore. It's the Bills mailbag from Jay Skursky. Welcome to a holiday edition. Let's get right to your questions. Ed asks, if you were creating a Mount Rushmore of the Buffalo Bills for America's 250th birthday celebration, which 4 Bills would make your monument? Which players come close? From Jay, Josh Allen, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, and Bruce Smith. I believe Allen will be the greatest Bills player ever when his career is done. When you think of the Bills in their greatest era, you think of Kelly, Thomas, and Smith. Andre Reed would come close. We've been over the situation with O.J. Simpson enough in this mailbag. Bob Calso, who was killed in the Vietnam War as a member of the U.S. Army, also deserves consideration for a spot. Ralph Wilson deserves consideration, but I decided to stick with players for my answer. You didn't ask for it, but here's my bonus Sabres Mount Rushmore. Rick Jeanneret, Gilbert Perrault, Dominic Hasek, and Lindy Ruff. Alexander McGliney would make my personal Mount Rushmore for the Sabres because he was my all-time favorite player growing up, but I personally feel like my choices are the definitive answer to that question. Gerald in Lewiston asks, I understand, but I don't. O.J. Simpson without question was the best Bills running back and a top 5 running back ever. Why is it okay for the Ravens to have a statue of Ray Lewis at their stadium, but we can't have O.J.'s name on the wall? Both were found innocent. Simpson was found liable for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman in a civil trial. While he was acquitted of those crimes in a criminal case, he also served a long jail sentence for armed robbery and kidnapping. I don't think we need to read any more into the Bills' decision to exclude him than that. The reasoning is clear and obvious as to why they're choosing not to include Simpson's name either inside the new Highmark Stadium or outside as part of the family circle area. It is the Bills' decision, starting with team owner Terry Pegula, on who does and doesn't get honored. If you're of the opinion Simpson should be recognized for what he did solely as a football player, you can point to his continued inclusion in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's true it gets murky when a team makes a decision like this, but where do you draw the line on what off-field situations qualify for disqualification from being honored? That's a question the team will have to answer moving forward. In this case, though, the Bills' decision is easy to understand.
Our next sports story, Capitals edition of Tuck helps Ovi. Article by Mike Harrington. Alex Ovechkin announced Thursday that he's coming back for his 22nd season with the Washington Capitals, and that's going to be one heck of a farewell tour, provided it's actually his last season. At age 41, you would presume that to be the case, but no one has said so just yet. One thing is certain, Ovechkin has been impressed enough by general manager Chris Patrick's offseason work, highlighted by the sign and trade to acquire Buffalo Sabres' Alex Tuch, to believe his team can get back into the Stanley Cup playoffs and make a run. So he opted in for another season. The contract is a classic over 35 structure with a low salary, $1 million, and lots of incentives. The cap hit is a reasonable $4.25 million, more than reasonable for a star who has played at around $9.5 million every year since 2008. Safe to say Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby, $8.7 million since 2008, will go down as the 2 biggest long-term bargains in NHL history. Alex is back. was the quick intro to a tweet by Caps owner Ted Leonsis on Thursday afternoon. Wrote Leonsis, "From the day we drafted him, Ovi has played with unmatched passion, relentless drive, and an unwavering commitment to his teammates, our fans, and our city. The greatest goal scorer in NHL history isn't done writing his Capitals story. Neither are we. Let's chase another cup together." The Capitals, remember, went from 111 points in a Metropolitan Division title in 2024-25 to 95 points and out of the playoffs last season. And it should be noted that they have won only one playoff series since their lone Stanley Cup victory in 2018 in Vegas prompted a memorable week of debauchery from Ovi and his teammates, highlighted by their impromptu wading in the fountains of DC's Georgetown section. "I'm making the moves for what I think our team needs, what our hockey ops group thinks our team needs, and how to make us the best possible, either with Alex or without Alex in the lineup," Patrick told Washington reporters after last week's draft. "These are moves for the next several years in the future as well. We've got a really good core of players over the next several years that we have a chance to be a contending team for a while here." Ovechkin is the all-time leader in goals, 929, and power play goals, 331, and is coming off a season in which he scored 32 goals and collected 64 points. His 5 power play goals and average ice time were career lows, but with a roster that now includes Tuck, Jordan Kyrou, Boone Jenner, and several intriguing young players. It no longer has to be the Ovi show all the time.
And now on to the scoreboard. From Friday's results from the American League, the Yankees finally broke their 7-game losing streak, winning 5-2 against Minnesota. Tampa Bay won against Houston 3-1, and Cleveland beat the Chicago White Sox 4-3 in 10 innings. Boston took on the Los Angeles Angels, and Boston won 5-2, and Toronto shut out Seattle 2-0. In the National League, St. Louis won against the Chicago Cubs 17-1, with Washington winning against Pittsburgh 9-5, and Atlanta beating the New York Mets 5-3. Colorado shut out San Francisco 15-3, but Milwaukee and Arizona took it pretty tight, as it was 7-4 in 11 innings from Milwaukee for the win. In the Los Angeles Dodgers, it was 4-3, with the Dodgers taking the win. And for the Interleague, Baltimore shut out Cincinnati 3-0, and Miami scored 12-5 against the Athletics. For Sunday's games, it'll be Minnesota with the New York Yankees at 1:35, the White Sox versus Cleveland at 2 p.m., Tampa Bay versus Houston, as well as Detroit versus Texas, both at 3:30. Toronto at Seattle will be at 5 p.m., and Boston versus the Angels will be at 9:30. For the National League, it's the Mets at Atlanta at 12:30, Pittsburgh at Washington at 1 p.m., and St. Louis at the Cubs at 2:30. San Francisco at Colorado, as well as Milwaukee at Arizona, will both be at 4 p.m., and San Diego will be at the LA Dodgers at 7:20. For the Interleague, Baltimore will be in Cincinnati at 1:05, Philadelphia will be at Kansas City at 3 p.m., and Miami will be with the Athletics at 4:30. For World Cup news, Egypt and Australia tied, though Egypt advances. The game was 1-1. Argentina beat out Cape Verde 3-2, and Colombia beat out Ghana 1-0. For Sunday's games, it'll be Brazil versus Norway at 4 p.m. at the Meadowlands Stadium. Mexico versus England at 8 p.m. in Mexico City. And for Monday, it'll be Portugal versus Spain at 3 p.m. in Dallas, Belgium versus the United States at 8 p.m. in Seattle. For Tuesday, it'll be Argentina versus Egypt at noon in Atlanta, and Switzerland versus Colombia at 4 p.m. in Vancouver. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, July 5th. We read from the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. That number again is 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Dan Arth
and Edwin Vieira. Thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's registered tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have Buffalo Magazine. At noon, we have the Sunday Gusto, and at 1 o'clock is the New York Times Sunday edition. Stay with us. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.